Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Learn English with Podcast Conversation, Episode 14. I am your host and I am so excited to have you here today. We have a wonderful episode planned, and I promise to make it both fun and educational. So, sit back, relax, and let's dive into the world of English. Let's start with a question. Have you ever had an experience where something unexpected and funny happened? Today, I'll share a few of my favorite stories. They are not only entertaining, but they'll also help you learn some new English vocabulary and expressions. Are you ready? Let's go. Story 1: The Surprise Party. Once, I decided to throw a surprise party for my friend, Lisa. Have you ever organized a surprise party? It can be so exciting. I invited all her friends and planned everything perfectly. The cake was ready, decorations were up, and everyone was hiding in the living room, waiting for Lisa to arrive. Finally, we heard the door open. We all whispered, "Shush, she's here." As soon as she walked in, we jumped out and shouted, "Surprise!" But guess what? It wasn't Lisa. It was her neighbor, Mr. Thompson, who had come over to borrow some sugar. He was so startled that he dropped the jar of sugar, and it went everywhere. Everyone burst into laughter, including Mr. Thompson. Eventually, Lisa did arrive, and we had a great time telling her about the mix-up. Have you ever had a surprise that went wrong? Story 2: The Lost Luggage. Traveling can be an adventure, don't you think? Last summer, I went on a trip to Italy. I was so excited to visit Rome and see all the historic sites. But when I arrived at the airport, my luggage was nowhere to be found. Oh no! Have you ever lost your luggage while traveling? It can be very stressful. I went to the lost luggage office and filled out a form. They assured me that they would find my suitcase and deliver it to my hotel. Meanwhile, I had no clothes or toiletries. I had to buy a toothbrush and some essentials. The next day, I received a call from the airport. They had found my luggage, but it was in Spain. Can you believe it? Finally, after 2 days, my suitcase arrived. It was a bit of a hassle, but it taught me to always keep some essentials in my carry-on bag. What about you? Do you have any travel tips to share? Story 3: The Cooking Disaster. Do you like to cook? I love trying new recipes. But sometimes, things don't go as planned in the kitchen. One time, I decided to bake a chocolate cake for my friend's birthday. I followed the recipe exactly, or so I thought. When I took the cake out of the oven, it looked perfect. I was so proud. But when I cut a slice and took a bite, it tasted awful. I had accidentally used salt instead of sugar. Can you imagine? The cake was inedible. We all laughed about it, and I ended up buying a cake from the bakery. Have you ever had a cooking disaster? Story 4: The Misunderstood Joke. Let me tell you about a time when a joke went completely wrong. Humor can be tricky, especially when you're learning a new language. I was having lunch with some colleagues, and I decided to tell a funny story. I thought telling my joke, but as I spoke, I noticed my colleagues' expressions changing from curious to confused. When I finished the punchline, there was complete silence. No one laughed. I realized that I had mixed up a few key words, and instead of being funny, the joke didn't make any sense at all. One of my colleagues kindly asked me to explain, and when I did, everyone burst out laughing, not because the joke was funny, but because my mix-up was. It turned into a memorable lunch with lots of laughter. Sometimes, making mistakes can lead to even better moments. Have you ever had a moment where your mistake turned into something positive? Story 5. The Unexpected Guest. This next story is about an unexpected guest. One evening, I decided to have a quiet night at home, watching a movie and relaxing. I made some popcorn and settled on the couch. Just as the movie started, I heard a strange noise coming from the kitchen. Curious and a little nervous, I tiptoed to the kitchen and turned on the light. To my surprise, there was a raccoon sitting on the counter, happily munching on a loaf of bread. I had left the window open, and the little guy had invited himself in for a snack. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream, but I decided to gently shoo him out. It was quite a sight watching a raccoon scamper out the window, bread in tow. After that, I made sure to always close the window at night. Have you ever had an unexpected guest at your home? Story 6. The Embarrassing Misunderstanding. Have you ever had an embarrassing misunderstanding? Here's one that happened to me. I was at a fancy dinner party, and I wanted to compliment the host on the beautiful chandelier in the dining room. I walked up to her and said, "I absolutely love your chandelier, it's so elegant." She looked at me with a puzzled expression and said, "What chandelier?" I turned around and realized that what I thought was a chandelier was actually a very modern piece of art. I was so embarrassed. We both laughed it off, and it became a running joke for the rest of the evening. Sometimes, it's these little misunderstandings that make life interesting. Have you ever confused one thing for another in a funny way? Story 7. The Language Mix-Up. Learning a new language can lead to some hilarious situations. When I was learning Spanish, I went to a local cafe to practice. I wanted to order a cup of coffee with milk, which in Spanish is café con leche. Instead, I said, café con lechuga, which means coffee with lettuce. The barista looked at me with wide eyes and repeated, café con lechuga. Realizing my mistake, I quickly corrected myself and said, no, café con leche. We both laughed, and I got my coffee without any lettuce. It's moments like these that remind us not to take ourselves too seriously and to enjoy the learning process. Have you ever made a funny mistake while learning a new language? Story 8. The Tech Trouble. Technology is amazing, but sometimes it can be a bit too much to handle. I remember one time when I was trying to set up a video call with my family. I had just bought a new webcam and was excited to use it. I plugged it in and started the call. To my surprise, the webcam only showed the top of my head. I adjusted it, but then it showed just my chin. After several minutes of fiddling with it, I finally got the angle right. I was about to start the conversation when my cat jumped onto the desk, knocking the webcam sideways. Everyone on the call burst into laughter as they watched the chaos unfold. Eventually, I got everything sorted, and we had a lovely chat. Sometimes, technology can have a mind of its own, don't you think? Have you ever had a funny tech mishap? Story 9. The Fashion Faux Pas. Fashion can be a fun way to express yourself, but it can also lead to some funny situations. I remember attending a friend's wedding and wanting to look my best. I chose a beautiful dress and paired it with some new high heels. They were a bit higher than what I was used to, but I thought I could manage. As soon as I arrived at the venue, I stepped out of the car and immediately tripped. I managed to catch myself, but then I realized I had stepped into a muddy puddle. My beautiful shoes were now covered in mud. I tried to clean them as best as I could, but I spent the rest of the evening walking very carefully. It was a lesson in practicality over style. Have you ever had a fashion mishap that made you laugh? Story 10. The Animal Encounter. Animals can be unpredictable and often hilarious. Once, I went hiking with some friends in the mountains. It was a beautiful day, and we were enjoying the scenery. As we rounded a bend in the trail, we came face to face with a group of goats. One goat, in particular, seemed very interested in my backpack. Before I knew it, it had nudged its way over and started nibbling on the strap. My friends were laughing, and I was trying to gently shoo the goat away without startling it. It took a few minutes, but eventually, the goat lost interest and wandered off. It was such a funny and unexpected encounter. Have you ever had a funny moment with an animal in the wild? Well, that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed these stories as much as I enjoyed sharing them with you. Learning a new language can be full of funny and unexpected moments, and it's important to enjoy the journey. Remember, it's okay to make mistakes and laugh at yourself. These moments make great stories and help you learn even more. If you have any funny stories or experiences, I'd love to hear them. Share them with me, and maybe we'll feature them in a future episode. Thank you for joining me today on Learn English with Podcast Conversation. Keep practicing, keep laughing, and keep learning. Until next time, take care and have a wonderful day.